the Clay Helton discussion you and Tony were having a little bit ago, or I guess a while ago now. So I have an aunt that's a USC grad, and I talk about Clay Helton with her all the time. She's a fairly decent donor. She's not a big donor by any means, but she knows a lot of the big donors. You know, she has her own litigation firm. They're in LA, so she knows a lot of the big donors. She knows a couple of the famous ones. And there's a lot of mixed feelings about him there. So I kind of wanted to break down, you know, what's really, you know, I think he's doing a good job. I think, you know, he could be doing better. But considering, you know, the sanctions, it's taken them a while to get over those sanctions they had at the end of the Pete Carroll years. And then obviously, you know, that mess during the Lane Kiffin time. But it seems like the vibes that she gets from, you know, she knows some admin, some BOT, alumni and stuff like that. And the people who don't like him, they're really incredibly petty reasons. You know, they kind of discriminate against him, kind of like they did with Ed Ordrum for the whole, he's a Southern guy, you know, and the elitists there in LA, you know, just don't really, you know, that kind of, his vibe doesn't really sit well with them, but that's just their pretentious elitist attitude. But then they also recognize, however, that the players just love him, you know, because he was there. He took over for Lane Kiffin when he got fired. I think he just coached one game, but he won. And then the staff retained him, or the Sarkisian staff retained him. And then, you know, he's a really popular coach. And I think the USC staff has this real, or not staff, but the admins and the BOTs are just waiting for him to really just fall on his face. Because the name that keeps popping up that they would really want out there is Chris Peterson. They really believe that they can lure him away from Washington in whatever role he's in currently. But they also realize, you know, he does, at least from what they feel, and take this for what it's worth, but they kind of think he's also got NFL aspirations. So I was just kind of looking what he's done there. His first full year there in 26 years, he won 10 games, won the Rose Bowl, finished third in the country. The next year, they had another really good year. They had won 11 games, but lost to Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Then the year after that, only 5 wins. They went 5-7. But then after that, he recovered, won 8 wins. Got 8 wins. And then last year, he went 5-1. He's won some division titles. So they can't really get rid of him with a resume like that. You know what I mean? Because that's not really bad. But at the same time, they still feel like they can do bigger and better. So what do you think? Do you think he's done good enough to keep his job? Or do you think, you know, he's always going to kind of be on that short leash, you know, kind of hot? I don't really want to call it a hot seat, but do you think he's still going to be on that short leash?
I think he's done the 7th best job in the Pac-12 based on my ratings. That I think that he's a decent coach. Like you, I think he's done better. As I explained a few minutes ago, he's done better than what USC fans, 90% of them, believe that he's done. You outlined it well, slightly different than I did, of what he's accomplished, which is reasonable. It's a solid resume. It's not outstanding. They've had 3 legendary coaches in the last 40 to 50 years, and John McKay, John Robinson, and Pete Carroll, and his performances doesn't come anywhere close to them. It's more in line with some of the guys in between. They come to mind. And yeah, they should do better than that. They should do better than that. They should be winning. I would say at USC, you should be winning, going roughly 10-2 just about every year, peaking, you know, with 11 or 12 wins, taking shots at national titles every few years. And then your down years are 8-4. And that's what it should be. He's more, well, he's kind of all over the place is what he's been. As you mentioned, those 2 really strong years, and the better year was the year they did not win the Pac-12 championship. But as I explained, they were one of the best teams in the country by season's end. Once they decided Darnold was the guy, he made the wrong quarterbacking decision coming out of the gate, unfortunately, that season. And I think it was Max Brown was the starter that he selected. Was it? Anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
I believe it was Max Brown. Yeah. And So I think he's a capable football coach, but USC is supposed to have a top 5 to 10 coach, and I don't think he's that guy. But like you say, they're waiting
No.
for him to fall flat on his face. They did somewhat one year at 5-7 2 years ago, but that was losing JT Daniels in the first game, and there was some excuse there. There was some disclaimer there. So if he would have followed up that season with another clunker, then he would have been gone. But he didn't. But he didn't rebound off of it to another Rose Bowl type season. They went 8-5 the next year. And then this past season, this past season was another kind of incomplete. And if you're going to grade it, kind of another C plus performance, because they were 5-1, but they were not dominant in these games. They were slipping by Arizona with last second touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then they lost a Pac-12 championship game where they were really outclassed against a team that didn't show much otherwise in Oregon. So if anything, it was a slightly disappointing season, even though it was 5-1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's winning 8.5 games a year. I mean, after 4 full seasons in the 6-game season last season. Yeah. Which, at USC, that's not great, but I don't really think that's fireable either. Well, and then, and the point that you've made in the past as well, too, California, the recruiting there is kind of slowly decreasing each season. Mm-hmm. I didn't really think about that. Like Georgia's really shot up, but California's starting to decline, and he's losing a lot of these kids to Oregon. A lot of California kids are still coming back here to the Midwest. Ohio State's getting California kids. Even Alabama and Clemson are getting California kids now.
But is that his fault?
Another struggle.
Is that partially his fault, though? Think of it this way. You're an Ohio State fan. If Ohio State was winning 8.5 games a year, would you be pleased with that? Isn't USC on the same level isn't USC on the same level as Ohio State? They're not currently, but aren't they supposed to be? And he's the guy in charge to get that done. And if Ohio, as you well know, if Ohio State stays at home in Ohio, they're going 6-6 every year, 7-5.
Right.
But if Clay Helton can stay at home, he can win the Pac-12, and he's not even doing that.
True, but in USC's defense, or in his defense, Ohio State's not a disaster internally. They've had 2 athletic director changes.
True.
Maybe even 3. And then they've had that mess. They've had, USC had that big, that scandal with the celebrities and all that. So USC as a whole has had a lot of PR issues in the last decade.
Yeah.
So that's another reason. And plus a lot of people are leaving the state. So, that's a struggle. And then also factor in this, he's now competing with 2 NFL teams in the city. During Pete Carroll's time in Sarkeesian, they were the team of LA. Now he's got to compete with 2 NFL teams in the city. You know what I mean? So, the attention, granted, there's a lot of fair weather fans there in LA, a lot of Midwest transplants, East Coast transplants and all that. But he's competing now with 2 NFL teams. He's got to compete with now LeBron James being out there with the Lakers. The Dodgers are now the best team in baseball. He has Mike Trout, even though he's unrecognizable still to a degree in LA because he plays for the Low Angels. But now he's got a lot. I just feel like he's got a lot more to deal with than, say, Pete Carroll. Now, I'm not saying he's good as Pete Carroll, not saying because Pete Carroll cleaned up an absolute mess when he took over that job. However, but he also was able to recruit. He had a great pitch. Come to LA. We are the team of LA. But now he has to compete with the Rams and the Chargers, who are in this brand new state-of-the-art facility. And meanwhile, he's stuck at the Coliseum. Granted, they're going through renovations, but that place is awful. I've been to many games there. It is not a very good place to watch a game. It's not in a very good part of town. So, no, you are absolutely right. He still needs to do a better job getting those California kids to stay home. However, a lot of it is not completely his fault, considering the overall mess the university is as a whole. And that's a big reason why Urban Meyer didn't go there, because he knew they have a lot of internal issues. Their training facilities are incredibly outdated. So I think they just need to try to stick with him until, he just blatantly falls flat on his face. And I don't know. I mean, the schedule looks pretty favorable here in the future.
Well, they don't have
and
to
the
do
recruiting
that.
is floating in.
Auburn just fired Gus Malzahn. Ohio State fired John Cooper after he went 8-4. They don't have to do that. They don't have to say, well, as long as he keeps going 8-5, 9-4, we're going to keep him. They may. That's what they've been doing to a certain extent, but they don't have to. They're USC. They can say, okay, enough's enough. We need to win championships, and this guy's not getting it done. 2016 was 6 years ago. They could be saying this in a couple of years. That was 6 years ago. He's done nothing but pretty much go 8-5 since then. So they don't have to.
All right, well,
he doesn't have to be
question.
a train wreck or a disaster for them to fire him. Places like Auburn are firing Gus Malzahn for going 8-4, 9-3.
True, but let me ask you a question about John Cooper then. If he doesn't go 2-10-1, say he goes 6-6-1, how much longer does he stay at Ohio State against Michigan?
Well, he does. Yeah. He survives. Or if one of those teams push through to win a national title, yeah, they're probably not firing him 3 years later for going 8-4. Sure. It's
right.
Not just all about the bottom line record. It has to be put into context. All right, sir.
Well, I mean, I think this one thing. Okay, there's one last point though. Again, the players just love him, but I think Chris Peterson would be an outstanding hire for them, and I just want USC to be good. It's like I want Miami to be good. So, all right, I know you got other people going. So, thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate it.